welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Huge game for Oregon as they play host to UCLA, just the 6th top 10 matchup of all time. We'll give you our thoughts on that game. Also, Chip Kelly, is it a resurrection for him, or have the Ducks moved on to a better situation with Dan Lanning? And then we'll let you know what Oregon needs to do to slow down this very balanced UCLA attack. Let's go ahead and get to our opening drive, brought to you by Les Schwab Tire Centers, doing the right thing since 1952. And it's a little bear on this set here. Jordan Kent alongside from the Oregonian, Aaron Fentress. And Aaron, no Joey, no Anthony. This must be just a holiday for you.
This is how it should be. It should just be me and you. I mean, why do we need those other two guys?
I'm going to stop you right there, Aaron, because there's no way I could go 45 plus minutes talking back and forth with you. So we got to bring in a real expert. Bring in George Reister from the Unafraid Show, former Oregon tight end. Yes, get somebody in here.
No, wait a minute. No, shenanigans.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we actually have some balance.
Anyone but George. Anyone but George.
You have to pay the piper today. You can't keep running, man. You can't keep ignoring all my text messages and my tweets. Now you gotta face the real Oregon fans, the people who know what's going on with the program.
Jordan, you did me wrong. I thought we were boys.
All right, well, we're gonna have some fun here, and let's get started with this. George, let's go ahead and kick it off. Oregon, UCLA, you looked at the schedule coming into this season. You thought, okay, and this will be a decent matchup at home, but you're circling Utah, Washington, Oregon State. This will most likely be the biggest regular season game of the year for Oregon. Number 9, UCLA. Number 10, Oregon. Just the 6th top 10 matchup at Autzen Stadium. We've mentioned Oregon 5-0 in these games. How big is this one as Chip Kelly comes into town?
Oh, this is everything. I mean, this is literally, I mean, they say the next game is the biggest game, but this is the biggest game. I mean, if Oregon can get past this game, aside from Washington, it really looks like clear sailing.
Utah?
From here.
Utah?
If they can get, are you serious, Fentress? Yes. If they can get past UCLA, the only team that even poses a real threat after that, I know that Utah has some weapons and all of that, but that feels more like the BYU game to me. I would actually be more concerned about the Washington game than I even would the Utah game, to be honest with you.
What are you talking about? You just saw USC lose to Utah, and Utah owned Oregon last year twice, like I own you on every debate we've ever had about the Ducks. So how can you say that game is not going to mean anything, and that this game is more important? I think that game is more important. I didn't say it wasn't going to mean anything.
I did not say it was going to mean anything.
You said it wasn't going to be that big a deal.
It was going to be a tough. That I believe that the Washington game will be a tougher test for Oregon than even the Utah game, because Utah is very good. But if you look at Oregon's strength this year, their strength is against the run. They have the number 1 run defense in the Pac-12. Number 1. Giving up less than 100 yards per game. And Utah, everything that they do is built upon being able to run the football at a high level. That's why their play action works so good and all of that. And USC, coming into this season, the thing that it was clear to everybody who had 2 eyes and understood their roster was that when they played physical teams, that they were going to have a problem. And that there were 3 teams on their schedule that were going to give them trouble. It was going to be Oregon State, it was going to be Utah, and then the third actually is UCLA, because those are teams that can control the line of scrimmage. And truthfully, if Oregon State hadn't have thrown four interceptions, Chance Nolan threw 4 interceptions and they lost by 3 points. That's where USC was going to struggle all year. They're going to win all the rest of their games, except for the UCLA game, probably. That's where their tests are, because styles make fights, Aaron Fentress, and you have to understand that where the weaknesses of a team are, and those are the ones that can be exploited.
Okay. Well, let's get to what this game would be here.
Oregon's run defense is overrated because they've played teams that literally do not try to run the football. Most of the games they played against teams that do not care about running the football, so I don't care about that. That Utah game, to me, is going to be tougher than UCLA, but commence, Jordan.
Well, I was going to say, what does a win here mean for Oregon? Let's start with them, because everybody saw them just get blasted. National audience week 1 against Georgia. And we keep bringing up that game, but it really did set the table to start the season for Oregon. Since then, they've rattled off 5 straight wins. And now here's a chance on the national stage, game day coming to Eugene. it almost feels like a win here with the fact that UCLA lost. I mean, USC lost. UCLA would lose to Oregon. Utah's already lost. It feels like this is Oregon's chance here, Aaron, to carry the banner for the Pac-12.
Well, absolutely. It'll validate them within the Pac-12 because they've yet to really play anyone that good. The best team they played was Washington State, and they, for all intents and purposes, had that game lost until they made a miraculous comeback. So if you can defeat a team that's undefeated like UCLA, that has a running game they have, the offense they have, and the quarterback they have, then that validates you as a legitimate Pac-12 contender, which I still think is up in the air right now because I still think there's 3 other teams that are as good as or better: UCLA, Utah, and USC. So clearly, yeah, you win this game, it's huge. No doubt about that.
On the other side, George, what about UCLA? They've played 5 home games, and their only road game has been at Colorado. What does a win on the road at number 10 Oregon do for Chip Kelly and the Bruins moving forward?
Oh, well, their confidence is already on max. Like DTR, like Charbonnet, that whole deal. Their confidence. They believe that they can beat anybody. And yes, they've played within the friendly, quiet confines of the Rose Bowl for the majority of their game. And I was at the South Alabama game. They had trouble with South Alabama, but I understand how those sorts of things happen sometimes. But for the UCLA fan base, and I live with a UCLA graduate, my wife, so she's big in there. And so, but for them, this would be a validation. Mm-hmm. This would be Chip Kelly's staple win. If UCLA gets their doors blown off, which I don't think is going to happen, you can come in and win this game. That's going to put UCLA on everybody else on national notice that UCLA is for real and that they are a contender to get in the playoff. I don't think they're a contender to win a national championship, but they are a contender to get in the playoff at that point.
First time since 2014, 2 top 10 teams have faced off against each other at Autzen Stadium. That was Oregon versus Michigan State back in 2014. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're just getting started on Talkin Ducks. When we return, we'll talk about Bo Nix. What does he need to do with another huge national spotlight game ahead of him? How can he step up? Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's time for some excellence on the field, presented by Ferguson-Wellman. Ferguson-Wellman taking a disciplined approach to investing. And really, gentlemen, it feels like Bo Nix has just been disciplined all season long. Again, after the difficult start against Georgia, we get that. We put that in the rearview mirror. But what will be needed from him, George? You've seen what he's been able to do this season with his arm and his legs. And here's another big-time national matchup against UCLA. And he's playing arguably some of his best football of the season, if not his career. What do the Ducks need from their leader, Bo Nix, if they want to get this win here on Saturday?
2 things. Efficiency. That means that to make the throws that you're supposed to make. Like don't try to be a hero. Be efficient. And the second thing is protect the football like Aaron Fentress protects his bad football takes. Protect them at all. Protect the football at all costs. Make sure that you are doing that you don't have to be the hero. And I think that that's what he's learned after the Georgia game, that the defense will help you out. The running game will help you out. And all you got to do is make the throws that you are supposed to make. I mean, literally Stetson Bennett won a national championship, making the plays that you're supposed to make. And this team is talented enough to where he doesn't have to go out and throw for 450 yards and then run for another 150. No, just go out, be efficient, and at the end of the day, you'll finish with around 300 yards and about 70 yards rushing, about 4 touchdowns, and you will probably be in good shape.
Aaron, what do the Ducks need from Nix here?
Okay, first of all, George, once again, just tries to pretend that certain facts don't exist. And here's a fact that you're ignoring. The one close game they've played in the Pac-12, Bo Nix had to throw for 400 yards to win that game. That is going to happen again here. Maybe not 400, but he's going to have to throw for 300 plus. He can't be a game manager in this game.
I didn't call him a game manager. I said efficient and make the plays you're supposed to make. That he doesn't have to throw the ball into the tightest windows and try to, throw honey hole shots and all of that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Semantics. The bottom line is he has to be special. He has to make special plays. He can't just be doing whatever the basic needs to be done. He has to make plays like he did at Washington State. He's going to have a big game because I do believe Oregon's going to give up points in this game. Their defense, not very good statistically in the nation. I think they're still 70th in total defense, 80th in points allowed. So UCLA, led by Chip Kelly, is going to score points. Bo is going to have to match. Now, he's only had to do that twice. He failed once at Georgia. Everyone was going to fail in that situation. But he showed that he could do it against Washington State. Now he needs to do it against a better team on a bigger stage, something he's really never done in his career. So it'll be a big test. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm not even saying he won't do it. I'm saying he has to be upper echelon Bo Nix for them to win this game.
And he brings up a good point, George, as far as the national stage. Can he handle it again this time? Because it was a huge stage to start the season. And now here you are again, a chance to take the lead in the Pac-12 and move up into the top 10 and really redeem yourself at home. And you are the favorite, so that pressure is again on Oregon. How do you think he handles it?
And George, you hear that? He said I made a good point. He said I made a good point. So make sure he said I made a good point. Now go.
Hey, a broken clock is right twice a day. So here's the thing. Here's the truth about Bo Nix. That if you go back on my Twitter timeline, when Auburn played Oregon.
That's a lot of scrolling to get there, by the way.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm going to be doing this for days.
If you use the Twitter search tool,
you
can see that I was never in on Bo Nix. I never thought Bo Nix was a great quarterback, any of that. But here's the thing is, if you do something for long enough, that actually becomes who you are. Yeah. And Bo Nix is showing that there's been some sort of change and growth in his game. And the good part is, this is not the first big game that Bo Nix has played in. He's played in the Iron Bowl against Alabama multiple times. He's played against Texas A&M. He's played in other really big games. Even his first game of his career against Oregon, that was a big game. Kickoff classic, all of those things. So he's not like a freshman coming in wet behind the ears. No, I think that he's learned a lot. And it's clear from the way he's playing this season since the Georgia game that there's been some maturation and trusting of his teammates. And that's the thing that I think is going to actually help him in a moment like this, is that it's not his first big game. He's been on big stages. He's been on national television. And as big as this game is going to be, this is probably going to rate, somewhere in between 4 and 5 million people watching this football game. Whereas he's been on that stage in the Iron Bowl 3 times, three or four times.
Did he succeed? But did he succeed on those stages? That's my point.
Well, some of the big games he succeeded, and some of them he didn't. I mean, his head coach got fired, so then that doesn't help. So there are some other elements to it. I'm just saying that he has big game experience, and I believe that that's going to translate to help him manage the nerves, manage the situation, and trusting his teammates, which he's done the last few weeks, and not try to be the hero running around, twirling around like he used to do at Auburn a lot, and then trying to make a hero throw. Just listen, if it's not there, chuck the ball out of bounds, live to fight another play, and be efficient and make the plays that you are supposed to make.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where he falls into this Pac-12 quarterback pecking order if he gets the win over UCLA. But when we come back on Talkin Ducks, we'll talk more about the Bruins, what they bring to the table, and how does Oregon slow them down. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Undefeated UCLA making their way back into Autzen Stadium. Chip Kelly, of course, returning to where he coached Oregon to many successful seasons. And this time around, the Bruins at this undefeated record here, Aaron, what's interesting is they played 6 games. 5 of those have been at home, and their only road game has been against really the worst team in the conference, Colorado. So is UCLA as good as they appear on paper, the number 9 ranking, the 41.5 points per game? Or are they in a similar boat like Oregon where they haven't really been tested that much?
There's some legit questions. I think there's no doubt about that. But they did take down Washington, correct? Washington went in there.
At home, yeah.
At home. And they have the top rushing offense, or second top rushing offense behind Oregon maybe in the conference. They have the most efficient quarterback in the conference. They have the most proven head coach in the conference. Am I wrong there? I'm trying to think. No?
Whittingham, I would say, is the most proven head coach.
He's more proven than Chip Kelly?
Well, Chip,
school.
hold on,
Kelly?
because Chip Kelly. So if you're gonna take the Oregon years, yes, Chip Kelly is
Yeah.
by
those
far
don't
the
count?
most proven.
Those don't count?
But if we're being honest, Chip Kelly, who I like, that last year was his first winning season at UCLA. So
Yeah, he rebuilt the program. He rebuilt the program. Oh my God, we're not going to do this. He's the most proven coach in the conference.
We've got a
Zero
whole
doubt.
segment
Zero
for that
doubt.
a little bit later.
Okay. So anyway, to your question. Yes, there are some reservations. There's no doubt. I don't believe UCLA is a top 10 team. I don't believe Oregon's a top 10 team. I think there's some smoke and mirrors going on. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this team is great that the Bruins have put out there, but they're definitely a threat in this conference, which is not necessarily the strongest conference in America. So yeah, there's some reservations, but when you have Chip Kelly rolling with a quarterback who's as efficient as DTR is, that's when he's just going to light you up, because now he can do the things he wants to do whenever he wants to do them, knowing that his quarterback is going to make the right decision most of the time. When they struggle in the past, they haven't had the quarterback or the defense has been horrible. Now he's got his quarterback, and the defense, not great, is at least serviceable.
Listen, UCLA is they have passed all the tests that have been in front of them. So you do have to give them credit. At the same time, we can notice that UCLA is streaky. They are like J.R. Smith early in his career. He might make 8 threes in a row, and then he might miss 17 in a row. You just and that's who UCLA is. Because I saw the South Alabama game. I saw the way they started against Bowling Green. They had special teams errors, all that kind of stuff. But when they get rolling, I do not believe that there's a player in the country, whether it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whatever other quarterback that you want to point at, that when they get hot, there is no hotter quarterback than DTR, because his confidence just exudes to his teammates. He starts doing crazy stuff like the Washington game, players hitting each other, and when that stuff starts to happen, it's a snowball. Like, you have to extinguish the fire from the beginning, because he's a fifth-year senior, a super senior even, fifth-year starter, and that his confidence is on max. And if you let him start to get rolling, bro, it is impossible to put that fire out, and then you're in for a very long day. And if he gets hot like that, the Ducks are not going to win.
But you admit UCLA is more battle tested than Oregon, because they also beat Utah.
No, I would not say that. How would you say that?
UCLA doesn't have better wins? Washington and Utah?
Washington? Have you seen Washington play the last couple of
games? But it's a better win than any win Oregon has.
Hold on.
My question for you is this, George. Even though Oregon got blasted by Georgia to start the season, you as a player have been on the field and you've played teams the caliber of a Georgia, right? And you see what championship speed and execution looks like. You might have lost the game, but that leaves an impression on you, right? Is it fair to say that Oregon being exposed to that Georgia game has prepared them well for their schedule, even though they haven't maybe played a team as good as Washington or a team as good as Utah? That experience, I think, has really helped shape this Oregon team and was an eye-opener for them.
Oh, yeah. I thought, and I actually talked to the coaches after the game too, is that Georgia game, I thought that was the best thing that happened to Oregon. I mean, obviously winning would have been better, but I don't believe that if they played them again, that they're 49, what was it, 49-3. I don't believe that that's the score. And
42-17?
Huh?
42-17?
No. I think that Georgia is better at this point in time as a program and all of that stuff. They're the defending national champions. But the thing that it did for Oregon is that it reinforced everything that the coaches were telling these 4- and 5-star players and all of that, which is what you're doing ain't good enough. They were turning down tackles.
I say that to Fentress all the time.
Yeah, they were literally, they were turning down tackles. They weren't physical. They weren't playing up to the standard. And they thought that they were. They're like, listen, we're balling. We've arrived. We're doing it in practice and all of that. And then they got on that field and got go on, fly back to Eugene. And I think that was a humbling experience for them. And when they came out and played against Eastern Washington, and then BYU, the way that they did, not turning down tackles, being much more physical. I thought that actually set the standard for everybody getting on the field. And quickly, the thing that makes Georgia and the Alabamas and the top Clemsons elite is the fact that there is a standard, is that you don't get on the field, whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, unless you meet that standard of physicality and excellence. So Oregon has to establish that. And I think that Georgia game helped out a lot.
George, I'll just say real quick, George, 100% correct for the first time in your life. Good job, George.
All right, well, Aaron, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk more about Chip Kelly. When we come back, we'll discuss what this year has meant for Chip Kelly, and also where does he rank all time as far as Oregon coaches go when he makes his return to Autzen Stadium. Stick around, plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Now, Chip Kelly making his return to Autzen Stadium. I mean, Aaron, this game has everything. Game day coming. Chip returning to his former squad. The new coach, Dan Lanning. But you look at Chip and the fact that the Bruins are 6-0. Is this the old Chip Kelly coming back now to take control of the Pac-12? And you mentioned it finally took him just getting the right pieces in the right place.
Jury's out on the whole taking over the Pac-12. Look, listen.
I didn't jump the gun there at all.
Just a little bit. We'll see. But listen, when Chip took over Oregon, he took over a team that was built to win. I mean, his first 3 years, he was coaching mostly recruits under Bellotti. Now, it was the staff. It was always about the staff, not about the head coaches. But he inherited a program, right place, right time, and had success. At UCLA, he had to start from scratch. And I'm giving up to UCLA for giving him time and not panicking and freaking out. They let him build his program from the ground up. So starting last year, he truly started to have his own guys that have come up through his system for 3 or 4 years. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. So the fact that he won at Oregon was huge, but he took over a ready-made product. Here he had to rebuild, and he's shown now that he can rebuild a program from the ground up. If he pulls off this win against a program that's been recruiting well for several years under Cristobal, if he wins this, and a lot of Oregon fans did not want Chip Kelly, if you remember that for whatever crazy reason they invented, then oh my goodness, it's a huge, huge feather in his cap, no doubt.
See, I think that Chip Kelly is, obviously he was a really good coach at Oregon. He's shown that he can and people try to poo-poo on his entire NFL career, but like he had some good years in Philadelphia. And then coming, and Aaron's right. If the second time, so a broken clock was right twice in one day, that he's rebuilt UCLA. He's done that. But but the biggest thing that he's done and the most impressive thing that he's done is how he's morphed. Because the way that he ran offense at Oregon is not what he's doing at UCLA. He has switched it up, because when you talk to other coordinators and head coaches in college football, they give Chip Kelly so much credit as that the genius label and the innovator and all of that. And then he went to UCLA and was like, okay, that was the past. Now I got to switch up the game again. So it took him a minute to figure out how he was going to run offense. And now he understands the type of personnel and the players that he needs to run the offense that he has now. And that's why part of the reason why they're having the success that they have had, in addition to the friendly schedule to start the season, which has allowed their confidence to build up in a major way.
Aaron, let's light a match here. Would both Oregon and Chip Kelly have been better off if they just stayed together this entire time?
Listen.
Football-wise. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other factors outside.
I know. No, I believe the dip was coming with or without Chip Kelly. As a matter of fact, I started saying that it was going to come in a couple of years during 2012. I think it was going to happen even with Chip Kelly.
Oh, don't get him on this.
I'm just saying. So the key would have been, had Oregon not panicked and freaked out on Chip like it did on Helfrich and the staff. I don't think Oregon would have.
They didn't freak out on Helfrich.
Dude, can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish?
They did not freak out on Helfrich.
Can I finish?
I like Mark Helfrich.
Can I finish? That's not the topic. We're not talking about Helfrich. We're talking about Chip. They would have given Chip a pass, and he would have rebuilt things just as Helfrich and those guys would have, the same exact staff, and Chip would have carried on and been successful. But I don't think he would have been rattling off conference titles, because what made them successful in that window primarily was the pace of the offense and then Marcus. The pace of the offense, the impact of that was going to wane over time, and it did. And like you said, George, he's adjusted and he's doing things a bit differently. But I don't think that Chip would have had the same success he had in those 4 years, continued on forever. But I think he would have found success as we've seen Mario find success. Now Lanning has some success, but it would have been similar, to those guys, not what he did for those 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think it would have continued on the same level that it was, only because Chip hasn't made a commitment to recruiting like you have to win national championships. And in the recent history, the last 15, 20 years of national championships, that blue chip ranking, it matters. Yeah. That teams that have not had a blue chip ranking over 50% have not won a national championship. And granted, Oregon was in the national championship in 2010 and in 2015 without a blue chip ranking, but we lost those games as well. And so so now Oregon is actually finally in a roster position to be able to win a national championship. I'm just talking about roster wise and talent wise as far as the blue chip rating goes. So now that you have to believe that if coaching goes well and if you get the right quarterback, that's when your championship window can open back up.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating.
We just saw the gulf, though. We saw the gulf, though, between national champion and Oregon 49-3. So I'm not going to go there yet.
Well, first game of the season,
a
whole lot to get to there. However,
this year, I said it can open back up, Aaron. You got to pay attention to the details. You have to pay attention to the words.
I don't see the talent level there yet.
When we come back, Fentress and Reister, we'll talk more about the Pac-12. A wild weekend, Pac-12 After Dark, as Utah stuns USC in Salt Lake City. We'll break it down when we come back on Talkin Ducks. All right, welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time now to see what's cooking, brought to you by Sam's Northwest BBQ, located in Sherwood, just south of Portland, the largest brick-and-mortar barbecue store in the Pacific Northwest, and your source for Yoder Smokers barbecue products in the great Pacific Northwest. All right, as we heat things up here, the conference certainly heating up here, gentlemen, because Utah, unbelievable gutsy calls down the stretch there, George Reister, to get the win at home against USC, handing the Trojans their first loss, and all of a sudden, there are a lot of teams that can throw their hat into the ring to get one of those top two spots to play in the title game, because don't forget, this year, it's no North versus South. It's just the two highest-ranked team in the conference. And so you look at what happened. Let's talk about this Utah-USC result. What did you see from that game, George?
Oh, I saw a USC team that was cutting through Utah's defense in the first quarter, where they went up 21-7, and then they stalled out a little bit, and then Utah was able to just they just kept grinding and grinding. Like you cannot just beat Utah in the first quarter. You can't beat them in the second quarter. They are a 4-quarter football team. And if you think that you're going to come out and just blow them out, it's not going to happen. But the thing that stood out to me about that game, first of all, Pac-12 officials are absolutely horrible. I mean, they're horrible. But I have no energy for the USC fans crying, "Oh my God, we got cheated out of the game." You were up 14 points, had a chance to go up 21 twice, and then you were up 7 points in the fourth quarter. You did not get cheated. You just didn't close the game. There are bad calls every single game. Stop with the entitled, "We're USC." You haven't been relevant in 10, 12 years. Like, just pace yourself, people.
They won the conference 5 years ago.
No. I'm just saying, because I'm a message board guy, and they're fans in the beginning of the season. We are a playoff team. Mm-hmm. We are above. We're leaving these peons to go to the Big Ten. And I'm like, come on, man.
Hey,
you're gonna lose two games.
Are you doing Jeffrey from Fresh Prince? Is that your Jeffrey from Fresh Prince?
Dude,
Master William.
People right now.
It's crazy though. Yeah.
Where's your grape? Can you pass the grape upon?
Well, Aaron, this is what's interesting. I was looking at the top 25 rankings, and if you look at the top 15 for, whatever, it's a good round number to choose. There's two conferences that have 4 teams in the top 15. the SEC, as expected, and the Pac-12. So what do you make about the conference, the fact that you've got 4 teams in the top 15 this late in the season?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've yet to cannibalize each other yet. It's going to happen,
Well,
though.
3 of those 4 teams have played each other already.
And well, only a couple, though. Anyway, you have teams who don't play each other. You have teams who are going to play each other coming up, like Oregon has.
Other conferences.
Oregon has UC. I'm just saying, once that starts happening, those teams are going to start falling out. My problem with the Pac-12 is what they do outside of the conference against superpowers, which we know has not always gone well. You just said yourself, USC hasn't been relevant. Well, USC is the only team from the conference to win a national championship in the last 60 years, right? Or 50 years, something like that. So USC needs to get back. UW shared a national title with Miami. So those are the only 2. But anyway, no, I think there's some teams doing well, but they're all displaying to me elements that would just lead them to just getting smoked against legitimate national playoff contenders, like we saw with Oregon against Georgia, and even the USC game. We all know USC doesn't have a very good defense. We talked about where Nick's ranked amongst the quarterbacks in the conference, and I still had Rising against or over Nick's, and this is why. The fact that he stepped up like that, rushed for 3, threw for 402, that's the type of thing that Nick's is going to have to do against a couple of these big games coming up that he did against Washington State, but that was Washington State. Great performance, you give him credit, but he's going to have to do it again because there's some teams coming up that are going to put up points on Oregon, but they don't have the defense that you would want to see national contender have. Therefore, Nick's could take advantage.
George, for the future of the Pac, whatever it's going to be, how important is it for Utah and Oregon to lock out an SC UCLA Pac-12 title game? Because I think that has a huge narrative, right? Things don't look good for the conference if it's SC and UCLA in the championship game versus a Utah-Oregon. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I was for so long a back-to-pack guy. Like, even when UW would play Michigan, I was like, I hope UW wins. That way, then when we play UW, they feeling all good, and then you crush their hopes and dreams. But as far as the Pac-12, we have no idea what is going to happen, what is going to be standing when 2024 gets here. So, like, I've abandoned my back-to-pack, and it's just like, hey, yo, we all mercenaries at this point, every man for himself. So I mean, I do agree though that you don't want USC and UCLA in the title game, because that'll continue with that elitist superiority attitude to see, look, we're so much better now that we have Lincoln Riley, so now we're going to leave them. And if you have Oregon versus, but UCLA doesn't act like that though. So if you have Oregon versus UCLA in the championship, or you have Oregon versus Utah versus, it's really only 4 teams that have a legitimate shot at making the title game: USC, UCLA, Utah, and Oregon. I think that's the end of the list.
Well, obviously a lot of football to be played here still.
The only team you really don't want in there is USC.
Yeah, Oregon, obviously a lot of difficult games on their schedule. Still a lot of football to be played before that conference title game. All right, when we come back, we'll take a closer look at the Bruins and how the Oregon defense can slow them down. Huge game coming up just around the corner. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. Time now for our legendary moment, brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza.
Up, looks, throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball! Down to the 35, the 40. Kenny Wheaton's going to score! Kenny Wheaton is going to score!
He hits it, and Oregon wins. And in 3 overtimes, Oregon wins. And up top, and there's Allen, the speedster. Breaks the tackle, watch out! Devin Allen, 70 yards!
Well, those are just a couple of memorable moments at Autzen Stadium over the years, but it begs the question with game day coming back, guys. Is Autzen Stadium, and Aaron, let's start with you here, is Autzen Stadium still the same feared place where great teams go to die, I think the great Lloyd Carr said one time, or have things kind of mellowed out over the last couple of years?
You know, have we seen a really big game there? I mean, we haven't. As you just said, this was the first top 10 team since Michigan State, right? So I don't think we have a lot of recent evidence, but I still think, I mean, that place is still super loud. The fans are right on top of you. They get into it, especially when a team comes in there that has a fancy ranking next to their name and has some, hoopla around them like UCLA does, and they get into it and they bring it the entire game. So yeah, I still think that the stadium's impact is real.
Hey, I'm rubbing off on you today, man. Hey, you're
I've always
learning
thought
how to
that.
be right. I
Whatever,
get it. Listen, I applaud you, Aaron. Listen, growth is a good thing. No, Autzen Stadium is an incredible place to play football. And it is still the place where great teams go to die. The only problem is there haven't been very many great teams that have walked into Autzen in the last few years. And when you have this amount of excitement surrounding the Oregon football team, whether it's the offense, the defense, the players, and the hope for the future, I think that is the thing that makes fans and the atmosphere so rowdy, because fans believe that they can win any game that they go out in the field and play.
So getting to this game, Aaron, you've got the conference's #1 rush defense in the Ducks, giving up just under 100 yards per game, versus the conference's #2 rushing offense in UCLA. Defensively for Oregon, as they face that rushing attack and a very mobile, experienced quarterback, what does the defense need to make sure they do a great job of on Saturday?
It's almost cliche, but I think it's a fact. I mean, you have to slow down the running game. I mean, as good as DTR is, he's best when they're running the ball very well, which is how Nix was, which is how Brown was last year. I mean, if you're running the ball well, you can do all the things with DTR. If he has to sit back there and throw it a lot, try and bring them back, it becomes a little shakier there. As for Oregon's defense, I mean, yeah, their ranking is good defensively, but they've played some teams that don't even care about rushing the football, like Eastern, Washington State, Arizona. So I think it's a little skewed. Stanford got the running game going a little bit, but they couldn't keep going to that because they were getting routed early. So I think UCLA is going to have some success there. So for me, that's the key. You hold UCLA under 200 yards, under 175. I think Oregon has a great chance to win.
George, defensively for the Ducks, what do they got to do?
They need to do two things. Number one, eliminate explosive plays. Like, you can't be giving up 15-yard runs and 20-yard passes. Like, those must be kept at like 1 or 2 at the absolute most. And then the second thing, and the most important thing, is get off the field on third down. You have to get off the field when you get 3rd and 6 plus. You got to get off the field, because and that involves winning first down and winning second down. That way you can get in some of those 3rd and 6 and longers, because those are good opportunities for the defense, because this Oregon defense has been, like when you look at the stats, them against the run is really good, but then against the pass, they're statistically last in the Pac-12. But when you look at the yards per attempt, they're actually pretty good against the pass in the yards per attempt, because they've scored so many points. Like Aaron said, that teams have abandoned the run on some level. So you are going to have a higher accumulation of yards when teams have additional possessions, because the scores are getting so high. Oregon scoring almost 50 points a game. So I think that the pass numbers are a little bit skewed, and then also the run numbers against the run are a little bit skewed as well. So I think the truth is a little bit more in the middle.
We're both
Yeah,
like,
it will be.
skewed,
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
It's skewed. I'll just say. It's like everything's. It is. You're right.
Yeah, it's interesting because this UCLA attack is very balanced. I think they're top 25 in the country in both pass and run, and similar to Oregon, one of the few programs that does it well on both sides of really what they can do offensively. So this will be a test for the Oregon defense. Last thing we forgot to mention, it'll be cold and it'll be rainy potentially. 55 degrees is the high, 60% chance of rain. So we'll see how that impacts things come time for kickoff. All right, when we come back, we'll give you our predictions. We'll wrap up shop and let you know which Duck needs to step up as we close things out on Talkin Ducks.
Our stadium is as crazy as it can be, right? It's hard to communicate on that side of the ball when you're out there. So creating that environment right now for our players is really, really important. But plenty to clean up. Excited about the direction we're headed. Excited to play a good team.
All right, that was head coach Dan Lanning. His thoughts on this one. Let's go ahead and get to our solid pick of the week, brought to you by Milan Stoneworks, bringing you the finest stoneworks in the Northwest. Oregon, favored by 6 at home over UCLA. The Bruins undefeated. Ducks riding a 5-game winning streak. Time to get to our predictions here. And Aaron, I know that we don't have Joey and Anthony here, so that means we might actually get 3 people giving a score prediction for the first time ever. So let's start with you. How do you think this one shakes out?
You just said I'm getting 6 if I take UCLA. So let me place my wager right now. No, seriously, I'm taking the 6 in a bet, and I think they're going to win outright. I really do. I think they're going to run the football. I think their DTR is going to then feast off of the fact that he's going to be in great down and distance situations. He's got some big play receivers, and he's got a running back in Charbonnet who's a legit big time, maybe NFL lead back down the line. I think he's going to give Oregon some fits. And I got UCLA, man. I'm sorry, 34-30.
Okay, George.
Wrong.
Wrong. Are you giving me the 6? Let's bet.
Yes. Listen, Oregon has covered the spread every single week except for the Georgia game. Every single week. So the odds makers have it spot on. And they are going to win by a touchdown or more, somewhere in between 7 and 10 points in this game. I'm going to go 42-32.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this one. I was looking at UCLA's record. They obviously have a very experienced, talented offense here. But for me, I look at this is their first true road game of the year. The first time they're actually piping in crowd noise.
They haven't even played against a defense that has a pulse.
Yep. This is the first cold game they're going to be playing here. You don't know how some of these guys are going to handle the rain. George, you know some of those guys recruited from Southern California have never played in the rain if this is the first meaningful minutes they're getting this year. I think Oregon wins by at least 11. I've got them 35-24 over UCLA. I think it gets off to a slow start. Depending on how this weather's going to be, I think there's a lot of hype, a lot of nerves, a lot of pressure that both teams are feeling. So I don't think it's going to be the cleanest game right out the gate. But I think for Oregon, they are just getting better and better week after week. And I think for UCLA, they've had a lot of fun, easy games at home. They've played some good teams, but Washington, we learned, isn't as good as they really are. Utah, hit or miss, UCLA better athletes. I think now that UCLA is on a road playing a team that's just as athletic as them, it's going to be tough for them. Now, with that being said, you've got to look at an Oregon player other than Bo Nix. Who do you have that really needs to step up for Oregon in this game outside of the QB? Aaron, let's roll with you.
I'm going to go with Noah Sewell, man. You know, they got to slow down the running game. He's your 5-star backer. It's probably going to be a first or second round pick coming up in about 7 months. This could be a signature game for him. If he can go out there and have a big performance, help slow this team down, run down DTR a few times, it could be one of those games that NFL scouts refer to when they decide whether to take him in the first or second round. So I'm going to go with Mr. Sewell.
George.
I'm going to go with the second best back in the Pac-12, Bucky Irving. He is going to want to show up. Zach Charbonnet, miss more tackle. Well, make people miss more. I think that he's actually going to get more touches in this game than we typically have seen because they've been sharing the load. I think that in a game like this, you go with whoever your lead back is. And I think that he has to have a big game in terms of making some special plays, making some people miss if Oregon is going to continue some of these drives and be able to put up more points than UCLA.
I'm going to go a bit of a wild card here. I think Chase Cota. Obviously, it's his former team. We know all the dramatics there, but poor weather, hard to push the ball deep down the field. You might find yourself in some third and long, third and medium situations. You got to find somebody that can make catches across the middle of the field. Now, I don't necessarily think he'll walk away from this game being the best player on the field, but I think he has his best game of the year this week against UCLA and has enough plays in the clutch to help Oregon keep some drives alive. But it'll certainly be a lot of fun. Very exciting to see what goes down between Oregon and UCLA. Hey, George, appreciate you stopping by, man. Great to always have somebody that can keep Fentress in check. Because
I don't appreciate it at all.
Hey, man. I wouldn't either, man. Go Ducks.
Hey, appreciate it. That'll do it for this edition of Talkin Ducks. Next week, we'll break down the win, potentially for Oregon, and set up the matchup against Cal. Have a good one. Enjoy the game.